LLC, back with another video. There's going to be another astrological dump, breakdown talk, and the main topic for this live is going to be the 12 aspects of God. And going through each of them, I'm going to be also giving examples, breakdowns into why. Because when people even think of God, you won't even have an idea in your mind, for the most part, that there are 12, bare minimum, different variations of God that apply to your life depending on your sign. Well, what are synonyms for God? Or what is God associated with? God in astrology, or God in life, is usually associated with the king, the president, the center of attention. He's associated with love, strength, points to courage. These are all things that are going to point towards God in whatever field or whatever background or culture you come from. But that truest, purest definition of God will only apply to an Aries for the most part. Or if you have the sun in Leo or in your 5th house. These are going to be the most prominent places where you're going to get this purest definition of you understand or you emanate the energy of God. And before I got into astrology, before I got into any of this metaphysical talk, I used to debate with myself multiple times through my youth and growing up, right? I used to debate with myself. What is the true understanding of what God is? Because for me growing up, right? Growing up in a religious background per se, God comes out of a book. You learn about God in a book, or you learn about God in a temple, a church, whatever you want to call it. Neptune, Pisces. And you learn it from a preacher, Sagittarius. And you're supposed to be given this grand idea of God. And in the words of the preacher, God is the Father. But that definition of God is like what I just told you. That is a different interpretation of God, not untrue. But it's a different interpretation of God from those main things I gave you. And you may separate those things I gave you before: kings, presidents, being a person who's courageous, natural, loving. The child is even considered God. We do everything for the child when the child first comes out, because the child can't do anything for itself. The child has no evil in it. It is ignorant to the world. So it has nothing but love, light, and happiness, because it does not know how to really even experience true pain, true loss. Its brain is not even developed enough yet to do so. And I had to sit and really think about those things, or these things, as I'm presenting them to you when I first got into astrology. And I had to understand why. It didn't make sense at first. Because for me, it's always been a difficulty when it comes towards love. Or I thought love was only rooted in pain. Love was only rooted in time, hard work. And it was also difficult for me to even know what love or what God truly was. Let me break it down. Let's say you're an Aries. You got Leo in the 5th. Leo is naturally supposed to be in the fifth. Leo rules the sun, and Leo sits in the fifth house. Naturally. That's going to be the most purest definition of God. What if you're a Taurus? What happens if you're a Taurus? Well, if you're a Taurus, that means you're going to have Leo in the fourth. You're going to have Leo in the fourth. It's shifted up one. Like, this is a wheel. You have all 12 signs. And let's say this is the ascendant, right? You go and you're moving across back to the ascendant, moving around the wheel back to the ascendant, right? This is the ascendant right here. If Aries naturally sits here, Taurus would be the sign that comes right under it. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, like that, until you get to a 90-degree angle. Cancer would be down here, Gemini would be somewhere over here, and Taurus would be right under Aries right here. And then you have Aries at the ascendant. But if you have Aries and then you move it up one into the 12, guess what happens? Taurus, that was down here, now becomes the new ascendant. So for all you Taurus sun signs, Taurus risings, what happens if Taurus is the ascendant? If Taurus is the ascendant, it moves Leo naturally from its place in the fifth and puts it in the fourth. Taurus is going to be your finances, your money, business, nature, your valuables, your possessions. I hope you can pick up what I'm trying to drop down here. In astrology, like I taught y'all last time, there's a natural 90-degree angle between the first house and the fourth house. And if Taurus is the first house, that puts Leo in the fourth. A 90-degree angle is a challenging aspect, a hard aspect. The toughest and most devastating creations in this universe are going to be things that are built on a square. Like the foundations of a property, a home, a building, usually are square. They're usually not round. Maybe the top is round, maybe we may change the middle to be round, but the foundations are usually a square. They have angles, defined right angles to them, because that is the most solid foundation. But at the same time, that is a challenging aspect. And isn't it written in the Bible you can't serve two masters? Isn't it written in religion that money is the cause of all evil? That money is going to make it difficult, or your love of money, your actions towards money is going to make it difficult for you to serve God? When you take your time to actually play with the chart, bare minimum, before you even get into actually doing the math, if you just take time to just think about the chart, because most people, I believe, don't really want to get deep into astrology because of the fear factor, for one. Or two, they think it's too much. Well, it's not really that much. It's daunting at first. It's not really that much. You can learn it within 6 months. You may not trust yourself with it for a good year or so, but you can learn it within 6 months. You know, like a college course. It's not that difficult. It's just once you get into it, you realize it just applies on the daily, every single day. Keeps applying to you. All right. So anything you can say about Taurus, you can say about the planet Venus. And let me tell you a pretty interesting fact. Venus, when it does its pattern, as Venus goes around the zodiac, it does a pattern that it makes in its orbit. It will form a shape. Venus will make a star pattern. Venus, the planet Venus, in the daytime sky, nighttime sky, in its 360-degree orbit from wherever it is right now, a year later, 360 degrees, back to where it comes again, the shape that it will make, let's see, we call it, it makes a star pattern, but it actually makes an upside down star pattern. In some schools, they would write that star pattern to be the Baphomet head. You could fit the horns in the goat head, or the goat head even. You could fit the goat head within that upside down star pattern that the planet Venus makes. And some occultic schools have taken that and ran with it. You do know that every single president election, every single presidential election is done on a Venus cycle, right? Every 4 to 8 years, that's about Venus's motion. 4 to 8 years. It'll do particular motion. Every time the sun conjuncts the sun, the ruler of Leo, right? The ruler that points to God, the sun. Every time the sun and Venus come into conjunction, aka they're in the same exact position in the sky, that happens once every 8 years or so. Every 8 years is a presidential election. You can't make this up. Venus also points towards politics, politicians. Isn't it politicians that are usually in a race, in a competition to see who will become the next president? Isn't it always a politician? You can't be a random person on the street and become president. You know, there's a chain of things you got to do first. You know, get into your local office. Then you got to become either a congressman or a senator. Join the House. Do things that, like, there's a chain of command before you are allowed to just run for president. Obviously, you could go and put your name on whatever ballot in whatever town, state you live in. Sure, why not? How many people win like that? Now you get my point. And it's when you start seeing these things and putting all these things together, it makes you question in general, wait, how much power or what is the true definition of God then? Or this is what I used to ponder when I used to read these religious books and things of that nature and intent, right? Gemini, reading books. I used to ponder, I used to think about how exactly is there one unanimous God when there's so many different stories and instances in the Bible, in the holy tablets, whatever you read per se, where God is completely different at points in times. There's the God who created the Big Bang. There's the God who kicked Adam and Eve out the garden. There's the God who did the flood. There's the God who made the Israelites or whatever fight in the wars. There's a God who had a son that reincarnated back here on the planet. There's different variations of God, depending on the story being told at the time, no matter what book you're reading. There's always a different variation of God, and I never understood that, because anytime you would go to a religious school or a place, they would try to get you to believe that there is one variation. But when it clearly says in, I think, the book of Genesis, I cannot quote it word for word, but you will find it, there are many gods, but I am your one true God. And that was in the very beginning. Remember when I talked about Leo, and then the preacher talks about Sagittarius being God the Father? Well, what points to the first or the one true God? Leo is a fire sign. Sagittarius is a fire sign. You know what else is the final fire sign? Aries. Aries is the first or one true God. One is Aries. First is Aries. is Aries. The god that went to war or removed all the other deities or other gods from the sky, that is Aries. And anything you could say about Aries, you could say about the first house. And anything you could say about the first house, you could say about the planet Mars. You could say about the planet Mars. And I was like, wow, that's insane. They're depending on your zodiac sign, depending on your sun sign, will represent what variation of God you are. Will point to the variation of God, the life force, the energy that you will associate yourself with. There are versions in the book that talk about the word is God. What do you mean the word is God? The word is Gemini. If you have the sun in Gemini, the word is God to you. Or at some point in time, you consider the word to be God. Through your reading, through your context, through your learning, your intellect, your communication with other people, you find God through the breath. The breath of life. Breathing is Gemini. When you get that first breath, you start your life. When a baby comes out the womb, when the blood oxidizes, because oxygen comes into the baby, that is when your life truly starts. Now, when you come out the womb, when you have your first breath, that is when life truly starts. So in a sense, not in a sense, so in reality, God takes form in that shape too. You see, we talked about Aries, we talked about Taurus, we talked about Gemini. But for a Taurus, since Taurus has Leo in the fourth, Taurus is going to point towards the mother or the family being God to you. Because depending on what school you come from, what religious background you come from, in the Quran, they talk about Allah and Alat. You know they're talking about the moon, right? In ancient Hellenistic astrology, or in ancient Hellenistic history, the name Yeshua or Yeshua, and I'm talking ancient African Hellenistic period, thousands of years ago. That name Yeshua or Yeshua was given to the moon. Allah or Alat is the name given to the moon. In Japanese or Shintoistic culture, the moon is considered a male deity god as well. Susano is what they call him. And in that culture too, the sun is a female deity, Amaterasu. For me, I could not just ignore or look past the fact that I can go on the internet as a youth or a child and find all of this right in front of my face. I can go to a school or education space with people of a different race and ethnicity as me and hear their perspectives and see their perspectives on life. And then come back to my own personal culture and hear them talking about their variation of God or our variation of God and act like there aren't other variations that are equally as true. Because it doesn't matter what community you come from, and this one most people don't realize because they're locked into what they have been taught and they have been believing. And it's not a problem per se. But every religious culture believes that their variation of God is right. They believe that their variation of God is right. And for some reason, in each and every single one of their books is written that their God will come to save them, the rest will perish. That's in every single one of them. I've studied them. I've gone into research. I've done looking into it. I can't act like I could read Hebrew or Yiddish or all these other languages, but if you talk to somebody that can speak both languages, or if you see the way their culture acts and things of that nature, how they interact with people, the underlying principle of that, there is a all-powerful, all-loving source, or all strength having source, because power is different, is unanimous. And it's an underlying consension. When you pass, you will go back to that source, and that source will carry you and yours toward a promised land of some sort. That's in everything. And those who do not follow your particular source, here's the catch. Those who do not follow your particular belief system, they won't make it. And that used to scare me, because is it mine? Is it my variation that's right? Is it this variation that's right? Is it this other variation is right? How about that one over there? I've seen it all. Or I'd say I've seen a majority of them throughout my life. Hindu culture, Yiddish culture, Arabic culture, you name it. Haitian culture. I'm a part of that. When you get, and no matter who you talk to, they're for the most part, they're only gonna be able to defend what they know. And again, that's fine, because that's all you know. You can only talk on what you know. But it was always confusing for me. It was always confusing for me. Now I can realize, now I can sit here and break down myself. Okay, these are the true variations of God. Okay, these are the real differences between cultures, even in the same religion per se. Even in the same religion per se, there are different variations. We have what they call denominations. There are over, I think, 1,500. It's somewhere in the thousands. There's somewhere over 1,000, or there are thousands of different variations of being a Christian alone. There's Catholic as well, Greco-Roman, Greek-Roman, Orthodox. Inside your own particular culture, there is no universal consensus on how to run or interpret the Holy Tablet, or the book that you're reading at the time. There isn't. We cannot even be unanimous within our own selves. So that made me believe, okay, maybe serving God is just a personal thing then. Maybe it's just a personal thing, because no matter what I try to say to people in my own lives, my own family members, or what I try to say to people of different cultures, everybody believes what they believe, and they believe that they themselves are the only ones who are right. And that used to upset me, because I'm like, we all believe in the same thing. Why can't we all just get along? And then you just get into the actual story of it all. You get into the wars that were fought, cultural differences, hatred, jealousy, prejudice over the years, cultural biases. All these different things are gonna just make people say no. You're gonna make people say no. But certain things, like I said, don't ever change. We all consider the God to be the strength Consider God to be the strength. Consider him to be the all-loving, him or her to be the all-loving source. But let's keep going through the wheel. If you're a Gemini, you're going to have God in the third house, in the Gemini house. The reason why Geminis can speak so well or talk to anybody is because they have that courage to do so. Their God spark, their motive, their intent, their personality, that's all Leo, that's all the sun, lies in their ability to speak, in their ability to write, in their ability to communicate. They have strength when it comes to the aspect of themselves.
And my mom just washed my hair.
And the closest thing we have to that is going to be, for a Gemini, a friend or their closest friends or their best friend, they would consider to be God, or they can consider to be, yeah, I'd say somebody with courage, confidence. A Leo would be considered a Gemini's closest friend. Because they sit in their third house. After that comes Cancer. Cancer has Leo in the second house. Cancers need, they have a necessity for love. Somebody who cares about you, Cancer. Somebody who wants to protect and nurture you, Cancer. They're going to need love in return. It's a necessity for them. But remember what I told you earlier. The second house is ruled by Taurus. Taurus naturally has a square or a hard time with Leo. So when you have Leo in the place of the second, it still is going to point towards a difficulty or a hard time no matter what. So Cancers, giving out all the care that they give out, still will have difficulties throughout time when it comes towards love or even giving out their confidence naturally. Now, this could change if they have the sun in the second, but it would still have an effect on them. They would need to have their sun in their fifth house for it to work out even better. Cancers naturally will have that issue. And then after Cancer, well, Cancers, their fifth house is Scorpio. And now let me tell you something else. The other sign, there are 3 signs that cause difficulty or hardships when it comes to talking about God. Leo, the fifth house. The first one is Taurus. The next one is Scorpio. Scorpio. What is Scorpio? Jealousy, hate. It also points to power, willpower. Where there's a will, there's a way. Think about it. Love and hate don't mix. Love and hate, love and jealousy don't mix. There's always going to be a hard time between Leo and Scorpio because there's a natural 90-degree angle there. Taurus is 90 degrees away from Leo, and Leo's 90 degrees away from Scorpio. So that means from Taurus to Scorpio, that's the relationship sign. They're 180 degrees apart. Just do the math. 90 plus 90 is 180. Taurus natural partner sign is going to be Scorpio. Does that mean that every single last Taurus is going to date a Scorpio? That would be cool, but it's not that simple. But every single last one of their partners is going to give off some type of Scorpio trait. Hate, jealousy. You're going to be a powerful person, an influential person. And you know what also Scorpio points towards? Sexual intercourse, the birthing process, living and dying. These are all things that naturally challenge God. And I'll tell you why. For example, God is considered the creator of all things. Leo is creativity. God, in the first 7 days of the creation story, if you look at that, for example, he had the idea in mind to create everything around us, for example, right? And he made it from his mind. But his creations in themselves, his two most prideful creations, the man and the woman. In this instance, you could say the man is Mars, for example. And you could say that the woman is Cancer. The woman became God herself when she gave birth. Cancers, like I told you, have Scorpio in the 5th house. God had the natural ability to just think and create. In the beginning, let there be light. He said it and it was made. The woman, Cancer, had to go through a process, a physical process to give life. Scorpio. Not the same way God does. God is just, he thinks of it, creativity, it comes too. And that's why there's natural difficulty, or in the Bible, in religions, there's naturally a bias towards men being in association with God versus women. Because Cancer in itself comes before Leo. That's a karmic aspect right there. The sign that becomes before yours is considered your enemy sign. The 12th house, or the sign that comes before, is considered your enemy, or the person that will be your undoing. And what happened in the Garden of Eden? Eve ate of the apple first, then gave it to Adam, and that made God upset. And what is it astrologically? Cancer comes before Leo. The woman, Cancer, comes before Leo, God. And it was the woman that ended up undoing God's law. That's not a shot at anybody or anything. That is astrological law. That is how the universe is fundamentally made. You can see where the Bible got its inspiration from. That is a natural thing. Now, if you're a person and you have a Leo or Cancer mother, and you're a Leo, and you yourself are a Leo, you may love your mom to death and your mom may love you to death, but you undo her at times. You can be her undoing at times. I'm a Gemini. My mother is a Cancer. I undo my mother sometimes. I've seen it happen. I've seen myself do it. Not even on purpose. Unintentionally, because my sign Gemini comes before her sign of Cancer. My intellect undoes her emotions at times. There's sometimes when she wants to get emotional and I just talk through it. It's not on purpose. This is how it works. Power, the ability to give birth, naturally squares Leo. And after Cancer, you go back to Leo. Now, Leo's on the ascendant. Ha! Leo is the second fire sign. What happens when Leo is put on the ascendant? What happens when Leo is put in the place of God? This is now God when he's angry. This is now the wrath, the anger of God. Aries is war. Aries is fire. Aries is action. When God is put on the first cusp, aka your Libra rising, not Libra, your Leo rising. This is when or why presidents declare war. Why kings go off and send their men into battle. This energy, or you have the sun transiting through your first, it can point towards you taking action, progressing, moving forward on the positive end. But on the negative end of the spectrum too, it can point to the opposite. It can point to the opposite as well. Point to people getting angry. Things of that nature and intent too. Or you can aggressively love somebody or love something. You can be impatient when it comes to love itself. There's a nuance when it comes to talking about astrology. But it's as simple as just go through the wheel and read. It's as simple as that. And now here's going to come a tough part. What comes after Leo? Or what does Leo have? Leo has Sagittarius in the 5th house. God loves his prophets. Sagittarius is the teacher, the preacher, the pastor, the priest, the bishop, even the pope. Doesn't God spend so much time and energy in his prophets throughout the Bible? Isn't so much time and energy given to the prophets, and the prophets are the one who's supposed to relay his message out to the people? Because God loves education. God loves to teach, to have himself proclaimed. And if God doesn't do it himself, he will send a prophet, a teacher, a preacher, a pastor to do it for him. That's why pastors have the power that they do. Because pastors, or let me say it this way too, anything you can say about the zodiac sign of Leo, you could also say about Sagittarius. Sagittarius represents the blessings of God. This is now God the Father. When you're talking about the Father God and how we are all his children, that's Sagittarius. That is what the sign points towards. And it points towards that in its sense too. When you are lucky, when you're winning, when you get a break in life, when you're like, oh my gosh, this blessing came upon me and I don't know where it comes from, or I got a blessing from God, that's going to be the Sagittarius aspect. That's the Jupiter aspect of it. And that's how that plays out. But here's now where it gets a little bit controversial, but it must be talked about too. What comes after God? What comes after God? I already told you the 12th house points to your enemy. It points to your enemies. It points to who or what is going to undo you. What comes after the Leo is Virgo. God plays the role of an enemy to a Virgo. What do I mean by that? Virgo is the servant. Virgo is the help, the assistant. Isn't it written in the Bible or in all of these holy books and tablets that we are all servants of the Lord? Or we are supposed to serve the Lord? The Lord is our master. Virgo is the servant, but it's also the master as well too. The one who's the king or a king of a castle, the president, whatever the case may be, they have a necessity. God has needs too. God has needs too. Children have needs too. Children need someone that's going to serve them and their wills and their whims. For example, the child, like I explained earlier, a child can't do anything for itself. Only thing a child can do is cry, laugh, make noises, and use the bathroom. And you could say it instinctually can run to its mother to get food, or go to its mother's chest to get food. That's about it that a child can do, especially when it's first born. And within those first couple weeks to month of development. That child, by default, is going to need somebody to serve its whim. And that could be its parents, for the most part. Could be a guardian, or whatever the case may be. Somebody that can provide all of the needs to that child. Cancer comes before Leo. Even though the 12th house of Leo is Cancer, and the 12th house can point towards your enemies, it also points to those you are in debt to. Every child is indebted to their parents for taking care of them when they come out the womb, for taking care of them until they get to a point enough where they can start to fend for themselves. Not every parent does this right or correctly, as we obviously know, but they are indebted to you. You are by default indebted to your parents or your family. This is why children cling on to their mothers or fathers so much when they grow up, or so much when they're children, because they're indebted to you as well. Because it's never black and white in astrology. Depending on what's going on in your life, depending on the planetary aspects at the moment, it could be one way or the other. Going through it some more. Going through it again. Virgos, servants are indebted to God. Servants or even masters are indebted to love. They experience love in their life. They experience what it means to be courageous. And they have no choice but to serve that energy. God, Leo, is the sun. The sun, if we're going to talk about planets, is the life force bringer of everything on this planet. The sun produces rays of light that condense and form all of the matter and material that we have here on this planet. You wouldn't be able to live if the sun's rays or heat didn't hit the planet. You would basically freeze, unless you found a way to burrow underground and get the core, get close enough to a natural occurring heat spring of some sort here on the planet Earth. You wouldn't be able to do much if the sun stopped shining its rays on the planet. It would be only a matter of minutes before the world freezes over. That sun is needed. It is the life force. It is your vitality force. It is your drive. It is your motivation. Vitamin D comes from the sun. Dopamine levels are directly correlated with the amount of sunlight you get. These are just facts. It's true. Virgo points to the slave. When you're talking about a different variation of God, like I explained earlier, If you're talking about Jupiter or Sagittarius, God considers us all his children. You'll see verses in there that point to that too. But you'll also find verses in whatever book or tablet that you read that God considers us his servants as well. That's a different variation of God. That is what happens when Virgo is rising. God has a necessity, second house, for servants, workers, the working class. Please name me a society that can thrive without its working class. Tell me. Tell me what functioning society, country, nation exists without a working class. Tell me. You can't find one. Virgos have what in their fifth house? Capricorn. Where Jupiter, Sagittarius, and the ninth house point towards blessings, luck, winning. Saturn, Capricorn, the 10th house. All three of these placements point towards difficulties, hardships, refinement, and guarantees. Difficulties, hardships, pressure that's going to refine you, pressure being put on you. But it also points to guarantees. Capricorn in the fifth house, if you want to do a direct translation, Capricorn is tough. The fifth house is love. Virgos, servants, slaves even, naturally are used to things being tough. They draw themselves towards the hard life, the difficulties, tough love, or the act of finding love is hard for them. It's hard for them for two reasons. Having Leo in the 12th, we didn't get there yet, but Leo, the eighth house, like I mentioned earlier, points towards Scorpio, points to willpower. It points to life and death processes. The eighth house is going to point towards the eventual death of everything or any sign. What's the eighth house of Leo? Pisces. The death of God is religion. The death of God, universally speaking, is religion. Spirituality, which is also 12th house, can also lead to the birth of a new God figure. Your belief can be what spawns a new God figure, but at the same time, it is your religion that can mark the death of God, the death of the current God that's in control or power at time. Religion, spirituality, is a double-edged sword. It can bring you to God and it can take you away or take it away from you. Told you, Scorpio and the sun are naturally 90 degrees apart. There's always going to be challenge there. So having Leo in the 12th house gives off eighth or gives off scorpionic energy, gives off eighth house energy. Because the eighth house of Leo is Pisces, and Pisces rules the 12th house. So when you have Leo in the 12th house, where Pisces naturally is, it gives off the same type of energy. Leo or the 12th house points to not knowing or don't know or fear. Slaves fear God. There's a fear of God, fear of the wrath of God. God giveth life and God can taketh away. A Virgo would say that. There is an innate fear of God that if you do not help, give aid or assistance, you can be punished for it. God can scar you because of that eighth house energy sitting over your head. God is manifesting. Here's another expression of God. It is written somewhere in the Bible that God is a jealous God. That God is a jealous God. If you have Sun conjunct Pluto, Sun trine Pluto, Sun at the same degree of Pluto, that can point to that. If you have Pluto in the 5th, or Leo in the 8th, Scorpio, if you have Scorpio in the 5th, Cancer, rising. If you have Leo in the 8th, Cancer, Capricorn, rising. Or even if you have Leo in the 12th, it will give off 8th house energy, scorpionic energy. Leo in the 12th, or you have Pisces in the 5th. Pisces in the 5th is going to be Scorpio. That could be a natural fear of God. That can point toward a jealous God, a vengeful God. All those stories you hear in the Bible, or you don't really hear in the Bible because most pastors don't want to talk about that. Because Scorpio comes before Sagittarius. Hate, jealousy. Same way how Leo doesn't like hate or jealousy or power. It causes problems for them. It also causes a problem for Sagittarius. Because the 12th house of Sagittarius is Scorpio. Scorpio is the natural enemy of Sagittarius. But Scorpios need Sagittarius because what is Sagittarius? Happiness. Someone who is indulged in hate, someone who holds a grudge, needs to find happiness. Happiness is needed, it's a necessity. So Virgos represent those who are underappreciated, who have to work, who have to serve, whether they deserved it or not. The humble one, the hermit. They're going to spend their life working because it is needed. God needs a servant. God needs a worker. A king is always going to need his people. A king is always going to need its servants, his servants. It's just how it is. It's just how it is. After that, and remember, Capricorn in the fifth, tough love. Or love has been cold to them. God tends to be cold to a Scorpio, and God tends to be cold to a Virgo. Because Scorpios have Capricorn, or Scorpios have Leo in the 10th. Capricorn rules the 10th house and also rules Saturn. Scorpio's 10th house is Leo. Virgo's 5th house is Capricorn. What's the difference? 5th house Capricorn, 10th house Leo. No astrologer can read that differently. There's not a single astrologer on the planet that's going to read that differently, especially if there are no planets sitting there. If the planets are sitting in different aspects or different placements, you can make inferences, but it would apply to both of them just the same. Or if you had Leo in one of those houses and then you had Pluto in the other one, you couldn't read it differently. You couldn't. So now we're at Libra. Now we're at Libra. Libra has God in its friend's house. People, humanity is all loving to a Libra. Libras love humanity, or humanity tends to have love for a Libra. Libras consider their friends to be the ones that love them, or they have massive love for their friends. This is where Libra finds their energy in God. The people tend to be loving towards a Libra. But Libra has Aquarius in his 5th house. The final sign that could potentially that has hardships or difficulties that come with the sign of Leo is going to be the sign of Aquarius. Leos have Aquarius in their 5th house, and they have Leo in their 11th. Libra points towards partnerships. Libra points towards partnerships. There's no other sign in astrology like Libra, because everything in their life is partnership based. Everything in their life is partnership based. They have each and every single sign in its opposite placement. Every single sign is flipped, reversed for a Libra. Everything is reversed. The zodiac chart goes Aries, Taurus, Libra. No, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and it goes in that order. Libra is the opposite. Libra starts the chart on the other half of the wheel. Libra, it goes Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. Then it goes into Aries. Libra has everything reversed. I told you earlier that Taurus's natural partner sign is Scorpio. Well, Libra has Scorpio in Taurus's house and has Taurus in Scorpio's house. Libra see everything from a partnership perspective. Libra see everything from a partnership perspective, from a fairness perspective. Libra undoes Scorpio. Libra undoes Scorpio. Libra is the 12th house of Scorpio. Life is not fair. Libra is fairness. Scorpio is life. That's where that phrase comes from. Life is not fair. Scorpio is having an advantage. Libras need to have an advantage. Libras need to have an advantage. They need it. Libras need to have an advantage. They cannot not have an advantage. They need the dark, the gritty, the underworld, the darker aspects of life. They need power. Libra is, what did I tell you earlier? The politician. Remember what I told you about the planet Venus? And how the planet Venus points to presidential elections, it points to politician. All politicians have a position of power. They have a position of influence. All Libras come off as nice, respectable, pleasant to pretty much everyone around them, because they want to have the ability to have influence. They want their words, their actions to actually hold some weight. This is why everybody's going to, go vote for their local governor, go vote for their local mayor. And they listen to them, even though that the local mayor, the local governor is not the president. But they say basically the same type of role. That's why they have Aquarius in the 5th house. But the 5th house works like this too. Remember, I said everything is for Libras in the partnership sign. Who is the natural partner of God? Who is the natural partner of God? Because the last time I checked, aren't the people who God has come for? Isn't it us, the people, who believe in God or have a relationship towards God? Out of any being or creature you've read about before in your holy tablets or books, who is God always having a back and forth with? Isn't it a human? Isn't a prophet a human? Isn't God's chosen people? Isn't it us? Doesn't God have the strongest relationship with us? And doesn't God always make his covenants with us? Humans, the people in general. God created the animals, nature, force, and all of that, and all of those things. But the one who causes God the most strife is us. The one who causes God the most strife is us. It's us. We do that. Those books are written for us. We write books for them. Who's doing prayer services to God? You don't really see animals. You don't really see animals for the most part. It doesn't mean that they don't. But you don't really see animals holding congregations, speaking of, debating over the existence, the love, the fortitude of God, of a king, of a president, of a baby. Animals do, for example. Animals, for example, if they see their young isn't going to survive, may eat the young. Animals can do that. Animals would do that. But animals would be Virgo. Animals would be Virgo. And remember what I told you, the 12th house of Virgo is Leo. So animals can consider their young the enemy. Whether they have to eat their own young or they eat the young of another competing creature. They may consider their young their enemy. Majority of humans don't do that, but there's a relationship between us and our children. We have a relationship between us and our children. We have a relationship between us and how we view the idea of love. Every human looks for love, whether it be self-love, familial love, love of your valuables, your worth, or love of a partner. Love of a partner. We are social creatures, the human race. We need one another. We travel in packs and groups. And we search for love in a partner. But we can also, because if you think about it, your partner is someone that you need or someone that you long for, but be someone that can cause you some of your biggest griefs, or someone that can be your rival or your opponent even. And you could be fighting for them for over control, when a relationship really should be a compromise for the most part. It could be compromised for the most part. We talked about Libra. We talked about Scorpio even. Because anything you could say about Scorpio, you could say about the 5th house. So we talked about the Libra. We talked about Scorpio. We talked about Sagittarius. Capricorn. Talked a little bit about Capricorn. Capricorn is control. Capricorn is difficulty, hardships. It is to be cold. Capricorn is foundation, structure. The 8th house of Capricorn is Leo. What would break someone's determination? Love. What would transform somebody's foundations? Courage, love. What would kill somebody's meanness? It would be love. Look at stories like Ebenezer Scrooge, an extremely old man with all the money in the world, mean to everybody, visited by 3 premonitions, the last one being death. And after he's visited by that 3rd premonition, what happens? Doesn't he come out of the story a new person, a loving person, charitable, loving, center of attention person? Even in a ripe old age, loving. Think of Isaac, Abraham, and the story of his son Isaac. Abraham is an extremely old man, for example. And his wife is extremely old as well. And they somehow have a child. And what happens to that child? God himself tells Isaac, offer your child as a sacrifice. It's right there in the book. God was asking the old man, the old couple, sacrifice a child. Scorpionic energy. It's right in front of your faces. Because I could never understand verses like that. I could never get it. I never understood why God could be so different in all these different variations, because there are different variations of God. There are different variations of God. And those different variations play out in every single last person's life. Because love doesn't mean the same thing to everybody, same way God doesn't mean the exact same thing to everybody. Capricorn's fifth house is Taurus. And we already know Taurus is a difficult aspect. Why does God go out their way to try to transform a Capricorn? Because a Capricorn has a love of money. You can't serve two masters, the book would tell you. You can't serve two masters. And if you can't serve two masters, you can't really love money. God already has a difficulty with people loving money over him. So that's where God can turn into hate, jealousy, the vengeful God, the jealous God. Leo in the eighth. That is a Capricorn rising thing. Leo in the eighth. And anything you could say about Capricorn, you could say about Cancer. And Cancer has what? Scorpio in the fifth. Scorpio rules the eighth. Leo rules the fifth. Cancer is Scorpio in the fifth. Capricorn is Leo in the eighth. They read the exact same way. The exact same way. One's love of money will turn God into that vengeful, jealous God that is talked about in the Bible as well. Yeah. This is where the book gets it from, whether or not you may believe it because of your personal beliefs. Remember what I told you in last time's live stream. There's a square between what the book or your holy books will say and what you practice and believe. There's already natural difficulty between those things. There's a natural sense of difficulty between those things already. But that would be the case. Next would be Aquarius. Aquarius. We talked about it a little bit when it came to Libra. Aquarius, natural partner sign. Aquarius, humans look for love. Humans in general, the entire human race is a race that looks for love. We are partnered with love. We look for love, things of that nature and intent too. And our biggest problem, God's biggest problem, is always with the humans and what they do. And God always makes his promises, his covenants, his decrees to humans. Not to the animals to give to the humans, but to the humans. All astrologically written. All of it already encoded. This universe has intelligent design. And it's in this entire universe, God is 1/12 of it. And God is expressed in 12 parts of it as well too. No matter how you believe God to be. The fifth house of Aquarius is what? Gemini. Now this brings me back to the very beginning of this live stream. And I said something very, very, very important. I think it's the Matthew, Mark, Luke. Maybe the book of Matthew. It might be the book of Matthew. But in one of the four Gospels, it opened up saying, the Word is God. The Word is God. What does that mean, the Word is God? Gemini is language. All forms of language, no matter what language you speak. Gemini is writing. Don't people write things that they know that are of worth or value? Don't people write down things that are of worth or value? Even if you write down a story per se, people tend to record things when they're trying to portray a message. So when the Bible says in itself the word is God, that is an Aquarian writing. That's an Aquarian writing. Humanity as a whole, we are currently in the age of Aquarius. Some schools of astrology will tell you because of the vernal point, we are still in the age of Pisces. I say not based off the vernal point, but based off, give me a second. Not particularly the vernal point, there's a different point. It's not when the vernal point of the celestial equator, when it crosses the ecliptic, that I would say would point to the age of Aquarius. I'm talking about March 21st, on the first day of spring, 0 degrees of Aries season. I would say that. And because of Aquarius B, the star system Aquarius B, it became visible at 13 degrees in front of and rose at heliacal rising in 1453 through 1489. And it rose up into the middle. I use the heliacal point to determine that we are in the age of Aquarius. Not the vernal point, the heliacal point. That was a mouthful, and even I'm fully digesting it too. Still, as I go, you will never learn everything. But God to humans are how we speak to one another. The human race as a whole finds love in our ability to communicate with one another, pass down messages to one another. God is in the language. God is in the way that we speak. Humans are social creatures. We need to communicate with one another. Nobody wants to be left in solitude for too long. Unless you're a Virgo. Virgos are loners, but even them in themselves, there are 12 types of Virgos, same way there are 12 types of Leos. Humans in general are social creatures. And we love to communicate in the simplest way or form of fashion. And again, society is also Libra, the 7th house. And Aquariuses have Leo in the 7th house. God for humans is society. Humans want liberty, justice, no matter where they go. That liberty, that sense of justice, the government to humanity is God. To humans in general, the concept of a government does set rules, laws, and regulations to keep things fair is God in itself. And you can't have rules, laws, and regulations without language, without words, without ability to communicate with one another. Humans need society, and society needs communication. That's how it works for the air signs. And finally, Pisces. Finally, we're going to do Pisces. Pisces has Cancer in the fifth. For the religious, for the spiritual, family is their source of love. Their family is their source of love. Their family. Family is their source of love. And remember what I said. Cancer undoes Leo. Cancer undoes Leo. But Cancer also needs Leo. Cancer is emotions. Pisces can be emotional. Cancer is lovely, but especially here, when it comes to black religious organizations and faith, or Christian organizations and faith, Southern or black Christian organizations and faith, there's a lot of crying involved. There's a lot of emotions involved. Especially when they come to talking to spirits, talking in tongues and things of that, it tends to get extremely emotional. Especially when they're doing their prayers towards God, it can get extremely emotional. Why? Cancer in the fifth. A prayer, active prayer, Pisces rising, active prayer, Pisces in the first, Pisces rising, Pisces ascendant, towards God, fifth house, a trine, easy flowing energy, will cause a burst of emotions, can cause you to cry. This is why when you see those videos of certain congregations getting into the spirit, it causes emotional outbursts. That's why those churches, those mega organizations exist. That's why it always goes that way. That's why it's a formula that does not fail. Whether or not you may judge the preacher or the person giving the sermon or the entire act of it, you cannot deny it is a formula that just works. Astrologically written as well. And where does Leo naturally sit? In the sixth house. Of Pisces. Religious people, people who love to give to the poor, things of that nature and intent, work on their love. Virgo points to working. They work on their love, their ability to love. They stress their ability to love. They stress their ability to have courage. Because Pisces naturally points to fear. Someone who is naturally scared or naturally does not know something will work to be a force of courage, a force of strength in the face of fear. And that's how that plays out. So I have gone through all 12 base variations of how God plays out in every single last aspect of creation. And depending on your knowledge of astrology, it goes even into more details. You can even break it down into more simplicity. And I only talked about the signs. really, and a little bit about the planets. And look how long it took just to do that. This is the vastness of what astrology can teach you and help you to understand about yourself and what you truly believe in. But this has been Chris is here, Astrology Universe LLC. I'll catch y'all in the next video.